Welcome to Calgary Talks, the social series. I have a chance to talk to great Calgarians on a regular basis, and this series is welcoming you into all of those conversations. I am pleased to be joined today by Sara Leishman. She is the Executive Director of the Calgary Folk Music Festival and just an all-around great human being. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So let me just kick things off by asking you, what is it that makes Calgary such a great place, a unique place to host something like Folk Fest?
I think part of what makes Calgary such a great place to host an event like the Folk Festival is Calgarians. They want to get out. They want to experience their community. They want to be in places with new friends and strangers and interact with one another. And I think that from that perspective, that's what really builds the vibe of the Calgary Folk Music Festival.
Well, not to mention the venue, Princess Island Park, which is gorgeous, but then you drop in Folk Fest and it just feels different. You can feel the energy.
Princess Island Park is absolute magic. And in all seasons, but certainly in the summer, when you've got live music floating on a breeze, you're being shaded by those beautiful poplar trees, it really is a huge part of what we do. And certainly years ago, when we had the flood in 2013, we looked at multiple different sites throughout the city because Princess Island Park was so heavily hit. Mm-hmm. And with that, we realized that there is no other site in the city that we could still do what we do with 6 stages plus a main stage. And then you also layer in that element of magic.
So you explained a little bit to us about how it's not just a singular event at one point in the year, that there's other things that go on during the year. What is it about Calgarians and the city with the amazing venues that we have that allows you to do this year round with different activations?
Yeah, I think that with Calgary, there's a genuine desire to collaborate. And so we do have our own venue, Festival Hall, in the heart of Inglewood. It's a 200-seater. And so we can only do certain concerts and so many things in there. And so we go out to places like Arts Commons, to the Palace Theatre, to Central United Church, for example, where it comes to Block Heater. And it's all of those venues' desire to collaborate. They want great programming. They want people in their spaces, in their venues. And so that desire to just lift everyone up and all work together, I think is something that really helps in the arts and culture space in particular, but really just helps buoy Calgarian spirits, that they know that there are things to do and fun activities for the whole family.
That's incredible. The idea that we have the best volunteers anywhere in any city, and the fact that everybody wants to collaborate is absolutely a success. But are there challenges that you're seeing as well?
One of the big challenges that we're seeing, particularly where it comes to the Calgary Folk Fest, which is we just had our 45th edition in 2024, is that we're starting to see a shift in volunteerism in terms of people used to sign on for 20 years. And we still have quite a number of 20-year plus volunteers, but we're starting to see a shift in people maybe making a commitment for 1 year or 5 years. And as a small, somewhat scrappy organization, we really have to make sure that we're putting in the extra work to ensure that there is better training to get folks up to speed, collecting all of the institutional knowledge that those 20-year volunteers have so that we're able to maintain our levels of volunteerism and at the same time ensure that they're feeling well supported and that they know how to hit the ground running when they get on site.
Well, it sounds a lot like it started out small and it was pretty intimate and there was a group of people that were really excited about volunteering, and then you scaled up. Yeah. And as it got bigger, you got more and more volunteers, and that's incredible. Now tell me, what does the future of Calgary Folk Music Festival look like in our city?
Yeah, the future for us really looks like how can we continue to program deep, diverse musical offerings. The original version and vision of the Calgary Folk Music Festival was to bring music from around the world to Calgary for Calgarians. And we continue to do that. We also are starting to look at what do headlining acts look like in this space now versus what they used to look like 15, 20 years ago. And it's not just about the acts, it's just about the changing face of the music industry and what gets people excited to volunteer, to purchase tickets, just come down and try it out maybe if they've never been.
So Sara, over the years, you've brought some pretty big acts to town. How do you foresee being able to do that into the future? I mean, is it getting more expensive to bring some of those big names in? And how do you manage that whole affordability concept?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. We're definitely feeling the squeeze and have been for the last couple of years. There are so many factors that come into play as part of this answer. One of the big things is certainly post-pandemic, but even leading into it, the cost for talent has just increased easily by 25 to 40%. And so from that perspective, we're trying to figure out how do we maintain affordability with ticket prices and still be able to grow our artistic budget. And that becomes quite the conundrum that we look at every year. You also have to factor in the Canadian dollar. And so we work with our bank and have products with our bank to help be able to at least budget for what's ahead. But certainly an ongoing consideration. Calgary is one of the most competitive markets in the country. And certainly we're 10 days after Stampede, and I love the Stampede, and we see them as part of our ecosystem. There's also the reality that there are hundreds of thousands of tickets that are being flooded into the market 10 days before us. And so how do we present ourselves and ensure that Calgarians understand that we offer something complimentary? It's not binary. You can go and see some great shows at the Stampede, as I do, and come to Calgary Folk Fest as long as we're maintaining affordability from that perspective. Certainly for folks, it's not affordable for everybody. And so we're always looking at ways to be able to ensure that folks still have access to those tickets. And what does that look like? And we're constantly just thinking about organizations that we can align with and programs that we can put in place to ensure that anybody who wants a ticket can get a ticket. The other part is certainly we welcome volunteers of all abilities. And so you get a free 4-day pass, we feed you all weekend. And so that's also a really great opportunity to be able to access the festival.
I like that. You know, if you're someone that maybe couldn't afford a pass otherwise, if you get involved in the festival, then you've got the opportunity to be there and take everything in and also give back to everything that Folk Fest offers to Calgarians. Let's talk a little bit about the nonprofit sector and what that means to our city and how an organization like yours succeeds. Let's talk a little bit about affordability and accessibility too. What have you seen over the years? Are there barriers that people have faced, and what have you done to overcome that?
Certainly. I think that we're always extremely price conscious with what we're doing. We remain a family-friendly event. So what that means for us is kids 12 and under are free, and seniors and students can come at significantly discounted prices. We work with different organizations to also offer complimentary tickets to groups such as the Refugee Clinic, to bring down a group for them to experience what the Calgary Folk Fest has to offer. The Calgary Folk Fest, you can go down and have your choose your own adventure type of activity. So you can come down with nothing but your bag and, your ATM card and go and just buy your drinks, buy your food, do your thing, pop from stage to stage, do it that way. There are lots of folks that bring in their own full day's worth of food. And so it's easy to make it whatever you want it to be, depending on what your income bracket is. We try to maintain our prices and not raise prices as we can, but certainly things are getting more expensive, and it is definitely a challenge, but it's something that we're always keeping an eye to and always debating. We take the time every year to have a debate about what are our prices, are these still affordable, and how can we ensure that Calgarians know that they can bring in their own non-alcoholic beverages, their own picnics, they can set up for the day and really make it for folks a staycation. Come for 4 days and have that activity.
And that's something that you see when you're there, when you're on the ground. People have their little patch of grass, they have their tarps, and, some people stake that out every year. It's the same location. And then you see other folks wandering around just experiencing everything. And I guess I want to ask you a little bit about, we talked about affordability and you talked about being price conscious, and I think that's amazing, but you also touched on the fact that you invite groups in. This past summer, I was so impressed that you reached out to people who had been evacuated from Jasper. and you just gave them a little bit of joy by inviting them in. So are you finding that part of your role also becomes creating an environment where everybody feels like they belong? And has that changed over time?
I think what we're trying to do is ensure that when you set foot on Princess Island Park, you feel welcome. Come as you are. So you may decide to show up, in what folks would consider sort of traditional folk fest attire. You've got your Birkenstocks, you've got your sun hat, but you can also show up in your furry suit or whatever the case may be. But what we do is when folks enter our gates, we want them to feel welcome, we want them to feel comfortable, and we want them to be able to understand, how does this thing roll? We have a group of ambassadors called Folk Buddies, and what they do is they spot people that might be looking like they don't know where to go, or they're not quite sure. Maybe somebody's got some pointy heels and they're attempting to walk in the grass. Our folk buddies will wander up and they'll hand them over a pair of flip-flops. We want to make sure that everyone feels like they know how to experience it, because there are certain traditions rooted in folk music, a Western Canadian folk festival, and certainly a 45-year event. And so we're happy to uphold and foster those traditions, but we are really encouraging Calgarians, make your own traditions. We hear Folk Fest is my Christmas all the time. And so from that perspective, it's tell us more about that. How can we include more people into what you're doing?
So Sara, when it comes to affordability, one of the things that we do at the city is offer a program called Fair Entry. And Fair Entry evaluates the income that an individual has. It offers them an opportunity to have a reduced rate on a bus pass or a recreation facility. I wonder if there's an opportunity for us to work with you and organizations like yours to offer passes through that program.
That's absolutely something that we would welcome. I think for arts organizations, being able to qualify folks is just something that we can't take on. We don't have the ability, the capacity, or the expertise. And so aligning with a city program like that is absolutely set up for success for us to be able to offer those heavily discounted passes so that folks can enjoy the festival.
I think that would be such a great collaboration. We've already got the system that allows us to do the intake and understand who would most benefit from something like this. So this is something you and I need to pursue.
I love it. That sounds great.
Well, I've got friends that come into Calgary Folk Music Festival on a regular basis, and they are so excited about being in this city. And it's not just Folk Fest that they're attending. They're taking in all kinds of other venues and amenities. So what impact do you think Folk Fest has on Calgary's economy?
We've measured, there's over $7 million that goes into Calgary's economy, hotels, local business, during our event. And from that perspective, we're only attempting to grow that. We continue to make very strategic choices around things that we can control, such as working with local business, ensuring that we've got a certain number of local food trucks on our roster, ensuring that we've got local artisans as well. And so from that perspective, we're trying very, very hard to work with as many local companies as possible. It's also somewhat of the post-COVID rebuild of the industry. And so for us, that's really, really important. And that's always been rooted in our folk ethic, if you will.
Tell me a little bit more about that. Tell me what it was like when we went into the pandemic and what it's been like to emerge from it.
Certainly going into the pandemic was very, very scary. We're in the business of bringing people together. And so from that perspective, it was okay, let's stop. Hopefully this isn't that long. What do we do now? We spent a lot of time, we pivoted immediately. So we started going into, as you know, we've got things called workshops, which are collaborative sessions on the stages where we put different artists together. We pivoted to doing Instagram lives with artists from across the country, where they were just chatting about their experience and not being able to perform or having their tours stopped, collaborating, playing songs back and forth for each other. We did that within the first couple of weeks. We then emerged into pivoting and using Festival Hall as a broadcast studio. So we then went into that whole business model and learned how to do that and figured that out. We were well positioned as a medium-sized event to retain our staff, which meant that we were able to do things that were bridges to get to the other side. And in 2021, we were able to do a distanced outdoor concert series. Was it the Folk Fest? No. Did it feel weird and different? Certainly. Did everybody love it? Absolutely. It was one of those things where we could all agree that this is just a way to get back to live music, and it was extremely special.
I would say that the arts sector, the music scene really understood what you had to do. You used the word pivot. And I think you really embraced the idea that you could still bring a lot of joy, for lack of a better word, into people's lives, but that you would have to do it a little bit differently. So kudos on your adaptability and for just keeping the tradition alive for Calgarians, because it is so important. And so I guess I would ask, having been through an event like that, probably has taught you a lot about resilience and what to do for future, if there's any kind of challenge that you're facing from an economic perspective or otherwise. So how do you think we should continue in terms of fostering the arts sector in Calgary? What are the things that we need to keep an eye on?
I think one of the biggest things is working collaboratively within the sector, but as well as outside of the sector, to ensure that Calgarians know what's on offer. That's one of the biggest things, is certainly the folks that know about us, but how are we bridging that gap outside? Certainly there's traditional media and traditional advertising methods, but we're constantly trying to figure ways to reach out to other communities. We've done lunchtime concerts, outside of the usual downtown core and that type of thing, just so that folks know about us. And I think that part of it too is really understanding that come as you are ethos that we have. You don't have to have a tarp. You don't have to have a backpack full of supplies to hunker down for the day. You can come for a few hours, you can leave, you can go and get refreshed at home and come back for the evening. Yeah. There's so many different ways that you can experience this event. And I would say that, chatting with a lot of arts colleagues, they're all really pressing that point as well. You can go to the Calgary Phil in your jeans. We want people to feel comfortable experiencing it and feel included and feel like they belong. Belonging is one of the biggest levers that we have in the arts, and making people feel like their hometown embraces them is one of the things that drives me every day.
That's so good to hear. We had a conversation very much like this with folks in sport as well as the arts. And that was the biggest takeaway and the biggest message. You have to be very intentional in how you're reaching out to your audience and how you're welcoming them in. If you focus on that element of belonging, you will always meet with success. So congratulations on identifying that early and often. It was amazing this year to go and see so many different people there, and just the artists that you had on stage. Everybody was very different from each other. And I think that's something that you've accomplished over the years, which is so great for Calgary. So tell me, what are some of your favorite moments?
Some of my favorite moments. Well, certainly any time that we have a local that is on the stage in a workshop with one of their heroes, that is always amazing to watch. And I've had the benefit of seeing it time over time over time. But for me, it's not even about the artists. As the executive director, I have the job of overseeing things, and I can hand that parcel off to our artistic director, which is great. And I'm happy to do that. I hear all the time she's got the best ears in the business. So having that in our city is wonderful. But for me, it's always Sunday night, twilight, as the sun is setting. I walk to the back of the main field and I look out over all of these people, looking at the stage, chatting with each other, hugging, smiling, playing with their kids. That to me sustains me. That moment sustains me for the next year of challenges and problem solving ahead, and just, keeping resiliency up for the next year.
Well, and it's funny, it's kind of like a wedding.
Yeah.
If it's your wedding, you know what you were expecting, and when it doesn't happen, you notice it. Yeah. But there's nobody else that notices it either. So I have to tell you, there's probably challenges that you see as you're going through the time of the festival that the rest of us never see it, because you do such a good job of entertaining us and making us feel like we are really in an experience with other people that is not like anything else. I had the incredible privilege of introducing Cowboy Junkies this year, which was amazing. I remember watching Joe Jackson and thinking, wow, this is actually happening here in my city. So let me ask you a closing question. What's your vision for the future of Folk Fest? And if you had to sum it up in terms of how do you want people to feel when they come there, what would you say?
When I think about how I want people to feel when they come to the Folk Fest, they fill their cup for 4 days, I want them to walk away with a feeling of pride in our city. I want them to walk away with a feeling that they have something to contribute, that they've just spent 4 days amongst strangers who turned into friends. And how can they take that feeling and practice it in their daily lives for the next year while they count down to the next festival?
That's a great lesson. And you know what? Folk Fest, really, when you think about the vibe, there's a lot of love. And there's a lot of understanding that you're better when you're with people. And, you know, that adage of we're stronger when we're together, you really feel that when you go to Folk Fest. So thank you so much.
Thank you
for putting this amazing event on every year and for sprinkling it throughout the year so that we don't miss what we're waiting for in the summer. I think you've done such a great job evolving the organization. So I want to congratulate you and I want to thank you for being a big part of what makes Calgary an amazing city.
Thank you.